With the first disclaimer, or the first important thing we should say is that E.C. Ferguson is not buried here. He's in fact, he and his relatives are up at the GAR. There's a tour next Saturday, 10 o'clock. Details, snohomish.thenandnow.org. So, I don't know how many towns can say this, but we have in our town grandsons who are not, they were here.
He's right here.
He's coming.
They're coming.
He's having blackbirds.
Grandsons of the founder, E.C. Ferguson, built this. Great-grandson. There he is, Gary. Gary Ferguson, where's your brother?
Can't get anybody.
He's coming. E.C. Ferguson, a carpenter from New York City, and an adventurer, ended up here in Snohomish with this cottage that he built in Stillicum, took it apart and shipped it up the river. And his partner, Hale Barnes, who was holding the claim for him, put it together. He came up in April 1860, a year after the cottage was sent up, and lived in here and had enough goods with him to start a store. The story didn't start until '64. But in April of, David's coming, he's going to help me out here, 1861, Snohomish won the site of the county seat. Ferguson came back with the county records in his vest pocket and set up the courthouse. It was also, he was the first postmaster, or the second. Edson Cady may have been the first one. That's why it was called Cadyville for a while. But this is a great day, and because we also have with us today is David Delgard, who back in the 80s when they were giving money out for such things, he got a grant to actually go up and measure the cottage and research it. And so this is based on David Delgard's research on the Ferguson cabin. I told him the sign is in, or the cottage, and he says, he writes back, "Great, I've been waiting 40 years for this." So it's David Delgard, if you don't know, is the history specialist of the Northwest Room, Everett Public Library, and he's my mentor on the history of Snohomish. So to ask him questions. You can also talk to Gary and Bruce, the two great grandsons of E.C. Ferguson, still living in Snohomish. It's a great thing.
Owner of the cottage.
And oh, okay.
Okay.
Since we got
Say a few words.
This actually, Everett Olson, who is no longer with us, but he would love to see this day, because he brought me to this cabin in '93, and he said, "This is the Ferguson cabin," and it was about to fall down there at Ferguson Cottage, and nobody knew what was going to happen until Rebecca Lovelace and her family came along and renovated the property. It's now used as a rental property. So talk to Rebecca too. So we got Rebecca, we got Gary, we got David, and Treats over here, and I'm supposed to ad-lib more now and until
The Toledo Tribes representative shows up.
really? I gotta keep it.
Dave will have. Yeah, maybe Dave.
Dave, you want to say a few words? We got to ad-lib until the Tulalip person shows up. Yeah.
At least 3 minutes. She's not due till 11:20.
Nothing you can't handle, David.
Tell him to come on up. Tell him to come up so we can all hear him.
David, can you join us?
Awfully nice. And of course also there are logistical problems here, because quite obviously you can't take people right back into people's backyards. The cottage was shifted about 100 feet from its original location, and that puts it in an almost unreachable spot up there without inconveniencing somebody or trespassing 6 or 8 times. So this allows people to walk down and look up, and it's the oldest building in Snohomish County. We should all be looking up to it, right? Anyway, so that's a good angle. And it would have been, of course, this is just in time, like 150 years this March since Ferguson itself came upstream and moved into the house. He sent the house up before it was offloaded off a little steamer right down there in pieces, since Ferg was a was a trained, highly skilled carpenter. He built a lot of it down in Steilacoom, and they just shipped it up here on a side wheel steamer, and in 1859, and offloaded it. And of course, originally he was right at the mouth of a stream, a creek that winds around back there, and originally came out. Well, I guess it still does. Culverted right, but it still comes out down there. And as was the gully that gave early engineers so many problems trying to build streets over the top of this cavernous ravine. But this is an exciting time for your community. I can't really express how much it means to those of us who love not just the history of Snohomish, but the history of the Pacific Northwest, to see you doing this. It's like I guess we all look at various communities and are excited when we see the people in those communities embrace their own history and preserve it and understand it enough to be able to share it with the rest of us, because it's all really a bigger story than any single community. But the part that your community has to play in that story of early Washington Territory and Washington State is substantial. And not every community that has that kind of heritage comes to terms with it. Heaven knows, if you look back the last 40 or 50 years for Snohomish, those responsibilities and those pressures and those tensions, there is no panacea. If you wake up and discover that you are in the midst of treasures, the responsibilities of trying to deal with that are enormous, and your community has wound up bruised and scarred from the fights that result as a result of having to decide what you want to do, what you need to do. Time and again, Snohomish has managed to find a way to struggle through. It's the example you set with the historic district. That's ironic. The pioneer community is a pioneer in finding ways to save and to call public attention, to interpret and to advocate, to educate, and Snohomish has done that. And this is another step in that. Beautiful step. I hadn't seen these, and they're wonderful. They're beautiful. I'd like to see all of the graphics off of these issued as some kind of a set of prints or something that us carpetbaggers can take away downstream to look at. Beautiful.
We could do that.
Beautiful reinterpretation of things that we've had around for a long time. So to see that beautiful engraving of the Nelly and things, it's wonderful to see. But I think that also we need, maybe when we're doing classes about county history, we need to do some classes about recent history of the heroics involved in trying to preserve and educate in regard to local heritage, because especially in the 21st century, it looks like those things are going to butt right up against some real challenges that you're going to need to face. And in the past, Snohomish has a history that it can take pride in trying to grapple with those things. There are no easy, pretty answers to how you save the best of your past and you incorporate it into something that still works for people now. It's about as challenging as a kitchen or bathroom remodel in a 150-year-old house. And your entire community has faced those challenges over and over again. And you haven't always been able to deal with them gracefully or quickly. That's part of the whole lesson. People like Warner, for instance, is a wonderful example of someone who manages to discover that art and history are not forever separated and not allowed to talk to each other. But in Snohomish County especially, we seem to wind up with little groups. That gentleman over there jumped over the boundary, as he brings all the poetry and the art of it and can apply it and can see it when he looks at the story of the place. God, we should all be able to do that. And Warner's a wonderful example of that. And in the amount of time he's been here, he's done enormous things for this community in terms of making it accessible, in terms of sharing it with us carpetbaggers, in terms of being open with the rest of us who were involved in debacles like the theft of the county seat. Sooner or later, if we're lucky, every community will get somebody. But you know, there's not many Warners around. You know, it's like you.
I think your time's up, David.
I have a question. Visiting New York today, how did Mr. Ferguson wind up coming from New York to this country?
Gold Rush. His brother, while Ferg was still an apprentice carpenter, his brother was out in California. As soon as Ferg finished his apprenticeship and could get clear of the responsibilities his family expected of him, he was out here. Chased gold in California, settled in, was a merchant there in the vicinity of the original California gold rush. moved on up through Oregon. He was chasing gold up in the Fraser River in British Columbia when he used up the last of his resources and had to fall back down to Steilacoom looking for maybe a government job, maybe just some work to do in a real community, and fell in with William Henson Wallace, the future governor of Idaho, and right at the right time, he was a Republican. Washington Territory, that was all Pierce and Democrats, and Ferg arrived just at the time that Lincoln got in, and thereby there hangs the tale. The Snohomish was a Republican enclave for well the rest of the 19th century, and Ferg was the guy that controlled politics. Frost and Fowler down in Mukilteo, Democrats, old school, retro. The Democrats were out of there and the Republicans were in. Ferguson was the king of the county for the rest of the time until Democrats reestablished themselves down at Everett and put up a threat. But New York was Edson Cady was from New York, from upstate New York. Frost and Fowler were both from New York State. Well, those people are looking for opportunities out here on the opposite side of the continent. We had lots of opportunities.
Thank you very much.
Back to you, Ann.
Thank you. Ann has gone down to meet Virginia Jones of the Toledo Tribes. She's arriving a little bit late, and we thought we might want to have a break for refreshments while she's arriving, and then have an opportunity for her to make a brief comment as well. And I think there may also be an opportunity afterwards to have Ann. We've encouraged her to kind of do a little interpretive walk on the actual plaques themselves about how they were developed, what their meaning is in terms of the chronology of the period that we're focusing on here. So while we're getting all of that ready, feel free to take advantage of our donated refreshments from Java Inn, Treats by Anne Marie, and Fred's Rivertown Ale House.